Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today, I'm going to be continuing my conversation with actress Debbie Gunn, who played Patsy Brimmer on the Waltons. Please welcome back Debbie Gunn.
I grew up dancing. That's what I did. This is my beginning in the industry. Was I didn't know I was going to be in the industry. I was dancing in Chatsworth, and I think it was in Chatsworth, or maybe it was Northridge. Sometimes I get these things wrong, but I was pretty serious, little dancer. And one day, um, the teacher told our class and several classes that on a Sunday afternoon, and I remember my parents and my brother, we were all going to go to the Northridge Mall that Sunday. But she said, there will be an agent in town from New York City, and she wants to interview and watch my students. And at the time, her husband, Burl Johns, was dancing on the Carol Burnett show. Do you remember the Ernest Flatt dancers? He was the redhead with curly hair. And I used to love on the weekend to see the Carol Burnett show. And everybody in dance class knew that her husband was one of the dancers on the show. So I don't know, in recollecting, if that's sort of why this agent came, like if she had some connections to something. But her name was Joan Simmons, not the actress. She was an agent out of New York City. And she thought, well, maybe I can work with kids that do other things, have other talents. And as you know, auditioning, I can remember one time having to take horse riding lessons, because you're gonna go in and you're gonna say, I know how to ride a horse, and the whole motorcycle race thing, that's what we did as a family. So that was another killer for me. It was like, no. And I remember my brother had to go take a few little lessons on a motorcycle for an audition. But she took me, which is so interesting. She said, I'd like to sign up Debbie. But she pointed at my brother, who was 6 years younger. And I think I was about 13, 14 years old. He's 6 years younger. And she said, when he shows interest, call me. So in my mind, my kid mind, it was like, oh, well, she wants to get to him. So I started going on auditions, and not long after she came out, she really didn't like being in California. She really missed New York City. And I remember the story so well. She went back and she referred us to Mary Grady. Mary, and we were with her a long time. My brother worked about 10 years in the industry. She was wonderful. Her daughter was Lonnie O'Grady, and 8 is enough. And then Don O'Grady, of my 3 sons, she took us. And in the meantime, my brother had tried to sign himself into a Kool-Aid commercial audition, and I was auditioning for, I think, Breck shampoo with all the hair. I didn't get it, but there was my little brother, like, I love Kool-Aid. I'm gonna sign in for the Kool-Aid. And my mom said, you can't do this. You don't have an agent. I'll never forget this. And you're missing your teeth. His teeth had fallen out. So not ideal for a Kool-Aid commercial. But she called Mary, because I don't think that he had shown any interest, and Joan had passed me over pretty quick. So I think I was on my own with Mary. And then my little brother, it was with Joan, and she passed us both forward. So it was tough, because the first thing she said was, you need to lose 10 pounds. And I was like, I know. I had a big round face. My mom loved it. I didn't. I was always like, my face, the hair on top of it. 10 pounds. Well, yeah, maybe in my face.
Yeah, I mean, as
why?
a kid, yeah, that's like,
why? I'm 14 years old, and I was raised in a pretty British family. We weren't like overeaters, or we ate really well. And I was dancing so much. And I remember, soon as I could actually drive at 16, my mom would actually let me go to my dance classes on Ventura Boulevard. So I would just dance because I loved it. But there were kids in there that were just eating nothing. And this was the beginning of anorexia. And I'm like, I'm healthy, I'm healthy, and I'm 10 pounds. I remember her circling my pictures. And it was because back then, and you remember, I don't know how it is now with digital, but back then on film, they said you had 10 more pounds on you when they filmed, right?
Yeah.
I was very, very, very thankful that during that time when those kinds of things were happening, that I really didn't starve myself or anything. I was watching so much of it in dance class. And I watched a girl break down telling me, or she was ordered tall, gonna go audition for ballet stuff. And I was auditioning, but I didn't get much because I was short. But, I'm on a hamburger patty and a pickle a day. And I think, what? Later on, I thought, oh, protein and salt, and how are you going to stand up? How are you going to last? And so that coincided all my dancing with auditioning and just being myself. And we'd go out on all these auditions and I'd see a room full of people that, girls that look like me. And I'd think to myself, I was so silly. I remember being so dramatic a few times, saying to my mom, we're a dime a dozen. We're a dime a dozen. We all look the same. I'm so tired of this. This isn't what I was meant to do. And I'd be so dramatic down to the wire. I actually had a screen test with Gary Coleman, and I was up for Dana Plato's role. It was down to two of us. And then it, boom, boom, boom. It just, each time was like, and then suddenly I just decided I got this audition for the Waltons, and I'll never, ever forget thinking, not that I wasn't myself, but I thought this whole world just felt like so much pressure at times, and such a disappointment, and I thought, I'm going to go in and just laugh and just be my bubbly self, be myself, and not care, about anything. And I walked into that waiting room, and there was all these girls that looked like me. And I thought, I just don't care. I'm just going to walk in carefree. And I should have been my normal kind of nervous self, but there was Earl Hamner in the middle, and some of the producers and some other people at a long table. And I sat there like we do by ourselves. So many of us as young kids going in by ourselves and sitting there with all these grown-ups. And I did my reading with someone at the table, and they laughed. And Earl Hamner, just the greatest story, said, I think we found our Patsy, looking around at everyone. I mean, today I have chills thinking about it because it was so surreal. And my heart was like, but there's a waiting room full of people and girls like me. How can this be? Oh, it's Hollywood. They can say whatever they want, And I just said, really? And they were just laughing, and they said, nice to meet you and all this. And I don't even know if they said, well, get in touch with your agent. I remember walking out into that lobby and holding my breath. And my mom, I still see my mom's face to this day, going, how'd it go? And I was like, out the door to the car. I didn't even talk. Inside the car, I told her, and she said, no. And I said, that's what they told me. And she said, well, we'll wait and see if Mary calls. And sure enough, that night she called and said I had the role. So It was a great story. And that was my meeting with Earl Hamner. I don't believe I got to see him again, but he was really cool. He was really cool. And it was pretty special, And I did feel really bad for everyone that was there, because I understood we drove back then, right? The freeway had maybe 3 lanes. And it took a long time to get there, but to go home. Most of our auditions were after school, and traffic was a nightmare. And we would sit and sit and sit in that traffic. Mom would come to the school. They did let me eventually drive on auditions, but she would often pick me up. I wouldn't know what was going on with the day, and she'd have a snack, and things to do and pencils and a board so I could do my homework. And she'd say, you've got auditions. I remember one time I interviewed for Leonard Goldberg in his office alone, and I honestly can't remember what the role was, but in one day we went from Granada Hills to those studios where he was at. We went back and forth into the evening. They sent us home.
Uh-huh.
It was, I think twice we went there, went home. They said we were good to go, just go. And then they called me back at like 8:00 at night. And then it was down to that one I know, and I can't remember what it was for, but that one I know there was a big discussion over an 18-year-old. And over my memory of that, though, was the first time into the offices. I was sitting in the waiting room, and it was a pretty big deal to interview for him. I remember the office really well. It was like a big gentleman's library, and he was very nice, and I remember walking in, but the receptionist was answering, phones left and right, and they were ringing. And at one point she said, she hit the button, said, Rona Barrett on 3. Remember the Hollywood Reporter and Rona Barrett. And it's different. Things are different now. But back then, she was the queen of Hollywood gossip. And I remember sitting there thinking, the gossip queen is on the line. Yeah. It's all so many memories of, just, and what our parents, I was listening to one of the interviews with, was it David? I don't know, or one of, just how our parents just drove us, drove us to all these things. And I don't know about you, or the kids on the set, but that was a really big commitment for families too. It was a lot, especially if you had siblings, and mine was doing interviews on other ends of town and my brother working on things at the same time. And
wow,
it's really interesting times. And I remember when I got to drive to Hollywood, thinking about, those times, my dad would say, how do our parents let us do these things, and they were pretty strict. And he'd say, park carefully and, be close to a phone box. If I even had change for a phone box. And I remember on La Cienega, on the over ramp, I rear-ended someone after an audition. And I thought about today, and I just got out of my car and I think the person had paper, and we exchanged phone numbers, and I did not go back to where the audition was and the pay box. And I just drove all the way home, and life was like that, I did a 3-hour ballet class on Yucca and Vine on Saturday mornings as soon as I could drive. And I ran into Michael. I think I'd been out of the industry, was probably about 19. And I ran into Michael, and I think I was too shy to say hi. We were in the same jazz class at Joe Tremaine Studios on Ventura Boulevard. And I'm like, she's in dance class. It was really cool. I didn't know she took dance classes there.
I didn't either.
She did.
I know she said she wanted to dance when she was young, but she was told she really wasn't talented enough for it or something.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, they were so cruel, and they still are in many ways. They're so blunt about their insults,
I know, they were so blunt, it was so interesting how blunt they were, and it probably caused a lot of the issues, that insecurities and eating issues that developed during those years for so many young actors and actresses, because they were so,
they still are. I mean, I don't think it's particularly
kind
changed. It's not a kind industry in that sense. I mean, there are a lot of kind people, right, but it's such a superficial industry because it is about
a look and
Yeah.
and other arbitrary things. And it's about talent as well, but it's not the only thing. It's not the only thing that gets you the job. And it's not the thing that prevents a job. I've seen people who are not terribly talented, but they look great on screen or something, or they're related to the right person, or all those sorts of things. So, and it's a hard industry not to take it personally, because every comment is about you.
And then today we're fed, if you're a young person or whatever age you are, if you even dare, back in the day, you wouldn't even read reviews because you would wait and wait and wait. And then maybe a review was written up. And if you wanted to buy the paper or read the review, you could read the review. Now you're running for your life away from all these people that have opinions on social media. They're the armchair critics,
Yeah.
Who's a critic? Who's a food critic? Who's a theater critic? They're all like, everybody's putting in their peanuts, their 2 cents. And if you take that in, because I'm a big fan of, Dancing with the Stars and American Idol and things like that. I love watching those shows, but when they do those interviews with those kids, some of them are TikTok stars and things like that. And you think, wow, you've gone through depression but why are you reading all these opinions? It's addicting. And it doesn't really serve yourself well. You almost have to cast it aside. And I used to teach photography, and I would just say, you want to study the greats. You want to study history, even those that are gone, and look forward and be creative. What you see in your mind. Don't look left and right at your fellow students in class and what they're doing. Don't compare yourself. Don't listen to what other people are saying. Just learn and see your creativity ahead of you. Dream it, see it, dream it, and do it. But don't let all these other things coming in, because that world too is just the same. There's great photographers out there, and actresses and actors, and and then there's but even in my industry that I went into, it was the look. Like if you were cool, wore a hat on the job, and it's not really about that. If it's your art, it's your art. I always wanted to just lay something down there, and I never really felt like I was really meant to be an actress. How
did that transition go for you? Because when and where and how did you shift?
Well, I think I went to school at junior high with somebody who became very, very famous, a girl. I won't tell you what show. Norman Lear did it. And we were good friends. And I remember being at the graduation party for junior high, and some kids had come. I think I'd gone home and brought some, treats, and they were laced with bad things. And my first introduction to how cruel kids could be and how mean kids could be when you've got something going on in your life that's wonderful. And we were all waiting around for some news, whether she got this show or not. And we were watching a national commercial during the party that she got, and just really so happy for her. But I saw the cruelty, and then I felt a little of it on my own. I just got really tired of thinking that maybe this wasn't really for me, that other kids I knew that were doing theater in high school, and then I ended up having, my youngest was a theater kid, and then I really saw passion, that maybe I just wasn't passionate in that area. And I had this wild imagination that maybe I would end up in college, and I didn't. I was busy. I was auditioning and doing things. And I just decided it was time for me to go explore a little junior college, go back to dancing on a more serious level, even if I couldn't land anything. And I just think I craved family so much that I wanted to meet someone and have a family. And so I realized the industry was a tough industry, and it was a tempting industry, and that if I got wrapped up in it, I don't know if I would have, done some of the things I wanted to do, like the creative side of things, become a photographer eventually, which is just a miracle to me. But I kept it on my mind all through raising kids. And I waited until my youngest was in kindergarten so I could go to school. And then I was really ready to take that serious. But prior to that, I just loved being married and having kids. And I taught dance. So I felt like the industry was something that I might not have something solid or steady in. I don't know. Maybe I didn't trust myself to keep a marriage and all those things that you have to balance in life that are so hard. It's hard enough to not have those extra distractions. And I was afraid of that early on. I think there was so many cute guys in the industry and so much out there. And I wasn't sure that was really something I was completely committed to acting in the first place. It wasn't really how I started out. So, and I, have no regrets. My mom used to say, just keep that Screen Actors Guild card because someday you can do a Mop and Glow commercial, And I was a mom, I thought that sounds like fun, and I was never really tempted back in. I thought, oh, nobody's going to take me at my age when I feel a little more mature and confident, and then as you have kids and they take over your world. There's things that you start working for that they want to do. And we talked a little bit about that, with you want to go to college, and so, you just start working for that. Much preferred being creative behind the camera and have always thought, had I taken a different path, I would have loved to be directing or in that realm in the industry. I think that would have been amazing on the creative end, because I'm highly visual. And I think someone told me recently, dance, there's so much, I love movement in everything and the visual aspect of that. So the opportunity to grow up and be mature and decorate a having kids, man, you don't really pay a lot of attention to things when you're raising a family. And now I feel like, wow, I'm taking such an interest in the things I used to do and history and architecture. And, the pandemic was a blessing in many ways. It was a terrible, terrible thing, but so many people, including myself, learned to do different things and took on different projects and DIY stuff, and reflected, grieved, became very grateful. I worked with a lot of kids that went into the theater in New York and did a lot of headshots. And during that time was really rough. These kids had worked hard and then suddenly, boom, that was a really tough time for the theater. And someone was saying the other day, the joy, my husband is a part-time musician, and the joy that people have to go back out and do things now and be creative. I think for so many, it was really tough, and a lot of people did not make it or overcome it. But those are the times where you realize, what are you made of? And stay creative and pull yourself out, because it was rough for a lot of us. So yeah. In the end, for me, I think you're never too old to have a passion and be creative, and to not let another person take that away, and that's really what I've learned, to follow what your purpose is and to do what's in your heart, because you get this one life to live. And I feel like I've lived it really well, and I've learned a lot along the way. So, and a blessing to have, done this show, because it's still on the air, which is really, it's kind of crazy. I feel like the world craves those shows right now. And that's why it's remained on, because if that audience goes, you know, we really do need those shows on. So I'm pretty grateful. I still have a hard time watching myself.
That I understand. Yeah.
I think we all do. So
Yeah. Well, I think what a wonderful message, and I think it's a beautiful note to end our reunion visit here. And I'm so glad that we've had this chance to reconnect and get to know each other as people and not just characters. So thank you so much for coming to be a part of this.
Oh, no, thank you.
It was so great to have Debbie come join me, and hopefully some other guest actors will also reach out to me, and I'll be able to schedule some more of these. In the meantime, I'll be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.